I thought I was building something real. A cafe, a marriage, a future. But every customer who smiled at me, she saw as a threat. Every peso I earned, she claimed was hers. I watched her destroy everything I'd worked for, not with violence, but with paranoia. And the worst part? I let her. Because I was so damn lonely, I convinced myself her jealousy was love. The espresso machine hissed behind me as I wiped down the counter, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I had a purpose. Terrence's corner, my cafe, my dream. I'd opened it 6 months ago in Malate, right in the heart of Manila, and every morning when I unlocked that front door, I remembered why I'd left Mackay. The divorce had gutted me. Sarah took the house, the savings, and whatever dignity I had left. My kids stopped calling after the lawyers got involved. I spent 2 years in that empty rental, watching the ceiling fan spin, wondering if this was all there was left. Then I got on a plane. I told myself it was just a vacation, but deep down, I knew I wasn't coming back. Terrence, we need more napkins out front. Shiela's voice pulled me back. She was standing by the register, counting bills with those careful fingers of hers. Her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She'd been working for me for 3 months now, and I honestly couldn't remember how I'd managed before her. She was 34, efficient, always knew what needed doing before I even thought of it. "I'll grab them," I said, heading to the back room. No, I'll get them. You focus on the orders. That couple by the window wants another cappuccino." She smiled at me, and something in my chest loosened. That's what she did. She made me feel capable, needed, like I wasn't just some washed-up retiree playing coffee shop. The lunch rush hit hard that day. Students from the nearby college, expats looking for a taste of home, local professionals grabbing something quick. I loved the chaos of it. Every transaction, every thank you, every compliment about the coffee, it filled a hole I didn't know how to name. "You're good at this," Shiela said during a lull. We were both leaning against the back counter, catching our breath. "Running this place. Making people happy." "I don't know about that," I said, but I was smiling. "I'm serious. Back home in Quezon, my father had a small store. I watched him work himself to death for it. But you enjoy it. I can see it in your face." She touched my arm, just briefly, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Seen, appreciated. "It's better than sitting alone in Australia, that's for sure," I said, trying to keep it light. "Were you very lonely there?" she asked, and her voice was so gentle, so genuinely concerned, that I almost told her everything, about the empty house, about how my son stopped returning my calls after I moved, about how I'd wake up some nights and forget where I was, who I was. "Yeah," I said instead. "I was." "Well, you're not alone now." She squeezed my arm and went back to wiping tables. I watched her move through the cafe, straightening chairs, smiling at customers, and I thought, maybe this is what starting over looks like. Maybe this is what hope feels like. We closed at 8 that night. Shiela usually left at 7, but she'd stayed to help me with inventory. We sat at one of the small tables, going through receipts and supply lists, and the cafe felt different in the quiet, intimate, personal. "Can I ask you something?" she said, not looking up from her notepad. "Of course." "Why did you really come here? To the Philippines?" Now she looked at me, and her eyes were serious. I set down my pen. I needed to disappear. Not from the law or anything dramatic like that, just from the life I'd built that didn't fit anymore. My ex-wife used to say I was boring, predictable. Maybe she was right. But here, I don't know. I feel like I can be someone different, someone better. "You're not boring," Shiela said firmly. "You're kind. That's rare. My last boyfriend, he was exciting. Motorcycle, tattoos, always out with his friends. But he never asked how I was. Never cared about my family. You? You ask about my day. You remember my mother's name. That's not boring. That's real. Her hand was on the table between us. Without thinking, I reached over and touched it, just my fingers on hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm up and held my hand, really held it, and we sat there in the dim light of my cafe, not saying anything, just connected. I was 65 years old, and I felt like a teenager again, terrified, hopeful, alive. I should go, she said finally, but she didn't move. You could stay, I said, and immediately wanted to take it back. Too fast, too desperate. I mean, for another coffee. We could talk. I don't have anywhere to be, she smiled, and it wasn't her work smile. It was something softer, more vulnerable. Okay, one more coffee, but you have to tell me about Mackay. I want to know everything about where you came from. So I did. I told her about the beaches, the humidity, the way the town felt like it was stuck in time. I told her about working at the sugar mill for 30 years, about coaching my son's cricket team, about the life I'd thought would be enough. And she listened, really listened, asked questions, laughed at the right moments, made me feel like my boring, predictable past was actually interesting. By the time we locked up, it was almost midnight. She lived in Quezon, almost an hour away, and I offered to pay for her taxi. She refused. I like staying late with you, she said at the door. It feels like we're the only two people in the city, like we have our own little world. Come back tomorrow? I asked, and I hated how needy I sounded. I work tomorrow, remember? She teased. Then she kissed my cheek, quick and light, and walked out into the Manila night. I stood in the doorway of my cafe, watching her disappear into the crowd, and I thought, this is it. This is what I came here for. Not the cafe, not the escape. Her. I came here for her. I just didn't know it yet. It started small. Shiela began arriving early, bringing me breakfast. Pandesal and coffee from a street vendor near her place, always still warm. You need to eat, she'd say. You're too skinny. I wasn't too skinny, but I liked that she noticed. I liked that she cared. We'd sit in the empty cafe before opening, eating together, talking about nothing and everything. She told me about her family. Her mother was sick, some heart condition that needed medication. Her younger brother was trying to finish college but working 3 jobs. Her father had died 5 years ago, and she'd been the one holding everyone together ever since. That's too much for one person, I said. I don't have a choice. They need me. She said it matter-of-factly. No self-pity, just acceptance. I admired that. I admired her. 2 weeks after that night we stayed late. I asked her to dinner. A real dinner, not just cafe talk. Her eyes lit up. Like a date? Yeah, like a date. If you want. I want. She touched my hand across the table. She did that a lot now. Small touches. Her hand on my shoulder when she passed behind me. Her fingers brushing mine when she handed me change. Each one felt like a promise. We went to a seafood place in Malate, nothing fancy, but she dressed up, a yellow sundress, her hair down. She looked beautiful. I told her so, and she blushed. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true. The words came easy with her. Everything came easy with her. Over grilled bangus and rice, she asked me about my marriage. Do you still love her, your ex-wife? No, I said, and I meant it. I don't think I ever really loved her. Not the way I should have. We were young. We followed the script. Get married, have kids, buy a house, work until you die. But we never really knew each other. Not the way I feel like I know you. You barely know me, she said, but she was smiling. I know enough. I know you're loyal. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you laugh at my terrible jokes. I know you make my cafe feel like home. I reached across the table and took her hand. I know I think about you all the time. She looked down at our joined hands. I think about you too. More than I should. You're my boss. It's probably not appropriate. I don't care about appropriate. I care about what's real. And this feels real to me. I meant every word. For the first time in decades, I wasn't performing. I wasn't saying what I thought I should say. I was just honest. My friends think I'm crazy, she said quietly. Dating an older man, a foreigner. They say you'll leave, that all expats leave. I'm not going anywhere. I built a life here. I don't want to go back to Australia. There's nothing for me there. I squeezed her hand, but there's everything for me here. You're here. I haven't been happy in so long. My ex, he hurt me. He'd disappear for days, come back smelling like another woman, and tell me I was imagining things. He made me feel crazy, small. But you make me feel seen, protected, like I matter. You do matter, more than you know. I moved my chair closer, wiped her tears with my napkin. I'm not him. I won't hurt you. I promise. She kissed me then, right there in the middle of the restaurant, and I didn't care who was watching. When we pulled apart, she was smiling through her tears. Take me home, to your condo. I want to be with you. I paid the bill with shaking hands. The taxi ride back was silent, charged, her hand in mine. My condo was small, clean, nothing special. But when she walked in, she looked around like it was a palace. It's so quiet here, peaceful. My place in Quezon, there's always noise. Neighbors fighting, dogs barking, traffic. But here, it's just us. It could be ours, I said, not planning it, just feeling it. You could move in, if you wanted. I know it's fast, but nothing about this feels fast to me. It feels right. She turned to me, her eyes wide. You're serious? Completely serious. I don't want you taking that long commute every day. I don't want to say goodnight at the cafe door. I want you here, with me, always. I was terrified she'd say no, that I'd moved too fast, asked too much. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll move in. I'll live with you. I'll be with you. I want that. I want us. We made love that night, and it was tender, careful, like we were both afraid of breaking something precious. Afterward, she lay with her head on my chest, her fingers tracing circles on my skin. I've never felt safe with someone before, really safe. But I do with you. I'll always keep you safe, I promise. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the coconut smell of her shampoo. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years, maybe ever. Don't say that. You'll make me cry again. But she was smiling. She moved in the next weekend. She didn't have much. 2 suitcases, some boxes of clothes, a few photos of her family. Watching her unpack in my closet, hanging her dresses next to my shirts, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the divorce. Contentment. Like the pieces of my life were finally fitting together. We fell into a routine. We'd wake up together, make breakfast, walk to the cafe holding hands. She'd work the register. I'd handle the kitchen and orders. During slow periods, we'd steal kisses behind the counter, laugh like teenagers. The regular customers noticed. Some made comments, mostly positive. A few of the older expats looked at me with something like envy. One Australian guy, maybe 60, came up to me one day and said, "You're a lucky man, mate. Don't screw it up." I told him I wouldn't. I meant it. But late at night, when Shiela was asleep beside me, I'd lie awake and wonder when the other shoe would drop. I was too old, too boring, too broken for someone like her. She was beautiful, young, full of life. What did she really see in me? I'd push the thoughts away, tell myself I was being paranoid. She loved me. She'd chosen me. That had to be enough. It had to be real. Because if it wasn't, If this was all some kind of mistake, some temporary thing before she realized what a fool I was, then I didn't know how I'd survive it. I'd given her everything. My home, my heart, my trust. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. I was afraid of losing her. That's how I knew I was in too deep. That's how I knew there was no going back. Leah started coming in around mid-morning, always ordered a flat white, always sat by the window with her laptop. She worked in marketing for some tech company, had that easy confidence of someone who'd grown up middle class in Manila. We'd chat while I made her coffee. Small talk mostly. How's business? How's the weather? Have you tried the new restaurant down the street? It was nice, normal. The kind of interaction I'd open the cafe for. You should add oat milk, she said one Tuesday. All the coffee shops in BGC have it now. It's better for people who are lactose intolerant. I'll look into it. Thanks for the suggestion. I handed her the coffee. She smiled, paid, went to her table. Simple, meaningless, except Shiela was watching from the register. When I turned around, her face was tight, closed off. What? I asked. Nothing. She went back to organizing the pastry display, her movements sharp, angry. That night, after we closed, she was quiet. We walked home in silence, her hand limp in mine. In the condo, she went straight to the bedroom. I followed, confused. Shiela, what's wrong? You've been weird all day. Why do you smile at her like that? She was standing by the window, arms crossed, not looking at me. Smile at who? That girl, Leah, the one who comes in every morning. Now she turned, and her eyes were cold. You light up when she walks in, like I'm not even there. What? No, I don't. She's a customer. I'm friendly with all the customers. I genuinely didn't understand what was happening. No, you're not. You're different with her. You laugh at her jokes. You remember what she orders. You lean in when you talk to her. Her voice was rising. Do you think I'm blind? Do you think I don't see the way you look at her? I don't look at her any way. I barely know her. I tried to reach for Shiela, but she stepped back. You barely know her? You just told me to add oat milk because she suggested it. You never listened to my suggestions. You never ask me what I think we should sell. She was crying now, and I felt panic rising in my chest. That's not true. I always listen to you. You run half the cafe. I couldn't do this without you. But you don't see me, Terrence. Not the way you see her. She's young, pretty, educated. I'm just the girl from Quezon who works your register. The way she said it, like she was nothing. Like I'd made her feel like nothing. It broke something in me. Stop it. You're everything to me. Leah is a customer. That's all. I love you. I moved you into my home. I wake up next to you every morning. How can you think I want anyone else? I grabbed her shoulders, made her look at me. You're being paranoid. Wrong word. Her face went from hurt to furious. Paranoid? I'm paranoid for noticing when my boyfriend flirts with other women? I wasn't flirting. I was being polite. That's my job. If I'm rude to customers, we lose business. I was getting defensive now, feeling cornered. Then maybe you should be less polite. Maybe you should remember who's standing next to you every day. She pulled away from me, got into bed fully clothed, turned her back. Conversation over. I stood there, replaying the day, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Had I smiled too much? Laughed too loud? I thought about Leah. She was nice, normal, not remotely attractive to me in that way, but trying to convince Shiela of that felt impossible. That night I barely slept. Shiela stayed on her side of the bed, rigid, unreachable. In the morning, she was cold, professional, spoke to me only about cafe business. When Leah came in, Shiela swooped in before I could take the order. What can I get you? Her voice was ice. Flat white, please. To go today. Leah looked uncomfortable, like she could feel the tension. Terrence, make a flat white. Shiela didn't move from the register. Usually she'd prepare the order while I worked the machine. Not today. Today she stood guard. I made the coffee in silence, handed it to Shiela. She handed it to Leah. The whole transaction took less than a minute, but it felt like an hour. Leah left quickly, didn't even sit down. She stopped coming after that. Just stopped. One of our regulars, gone because my girlfriend couldn't handle a simple conversation. But I didn't say anything. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. I told myself Shiela was just insecure, that she'd get over it. I told myself a lot of things. What I didn't tell myself was the truth. That I'd just chosen peace over principle. That I'd just let someone else's jealousy control my behavior. That this was only the beginning. Over the next week, Shiela watched me. Every interaction with a female customer, she monitored. If I smiled too much, she'd find a reason to interrupt. If someone asked me a question, she'd answer for me. My staff noticed. Manny, the guy who handled deliveries, asked me if everything was okay. You seem stressed, boss. Just busy, I lied. Carlo, who worked afternoons, started staying in the back room more. Josie, my barista, tried to talk to me one day when Shiela was in the bathroom. Terrence, is everything all right? Between you and Shiela? Yeah. Why? It's just, she's been kind of tense lately. And you seem, I don't know, different. Quieter. Josie was 26, smart, had good instincts about people. We're fine, just adjusting to living together. It's new. I smiled, trying to sell it. Okay. But if you need to talk, I'm here. She touched my arm, friendly, meaningless. Shiela walked out of the bathroom at exactly that moment. I saw her face change, saw her jaw tighten. That night, she didn't speak to me at all. I asked what was wrong. She said nothing. I asked again. She exploded. I saw her touch you. Don't lie to me. I saw Josie put her hand on your arm, right in front of me. She was pacing the condo, frantic, furious. She was being nice. That's how she is with everyone. It didn't mean anything. I felt exhausted. We'd been having versions of this fight every day. Then tell her to stop. Tell her she can't touch you. Tell her you have a girlfriend. Shiela was crying now, that specific kind of angry crying that made me feel like the worst person alive. I will. I'll tell her. Okay? I'll make it clear. I would have said anything to make her stop crying. I would have agreed to anything to get back the woman who'd made me feel alive 2 months ago. You promise? You promise you'll keep her away from you? She grabbed my shirt, looked up at me with those red, desperate eyes. I promise. It's you, Shiela. Only you. I don't want anyone else. I held her, felt her shake against me. I love you. You have to believe that. I'm just scared. I'm scared you'll realize I'm not good enough. That you'll find someone younger, someone better. She was whispering now, broken. Never. That will never happen. You're it for me. I'm yours. Completely. I meant it. In that moment, holding her while she cried, I would have done anything to prove it. The next day, I stopped smiling at customers. I kept conversations short. When women asked me questions, I answered quickly and moved away. I stopped being friendly. I stopped being myself. And Shiela relaxed. She started touching me again, started laughing. She'd kiss me in the cafe when no one was looking, whisper that she loved me, tell me I was the best man she'd ever known. I told myself this was normal, that all couples go through jealous phases, that she'd been hurt before and just needed time to trust me. I told myself if I just proved my loyalty, she'd stop being so afraid. I didn't realize I was training her, teaching her that if she cried, if she threatened, if she made me feel guilty enough, I'd do whatever she wanted. I didn't realize I was disappearing. That the man who'd opened a cafe and moved to Manila to find himself was slowly being erased, one smile at a time, one conversation at a time, one compromise at a time, until there was nothing left but the version of me she needed, the version that kept her from feeling afraid. A tourist couple came in one afternoon, American, maybe in their 30s. They were lost, looking for some museum nearby. The woman asked me for directions while her husband looked at his phone. I pulled up Google Maps, showed her the route, explained it would be about a 15-minute walk. She thanked me, smiled, bought 2 coffees. Simple, innocent. Shiela was in the back checking inventory. When she came out, she looked at me like I'd committed murder. "What?" I asked. "You gave that woman your phone. I saw you hand her your phone." Her voice was shaking. To show her directions. Her phone was dead. I was helping. I couldn't believe we were doing this again. You let a strange woman touch your phone. Do you know how intimate that is? What if she put her number in there? What if she texted herself from your phone? Shiela was spiraling. I could see it happening. She didn't. She's married. She was with her husband. Nothing happened. I kept my voice low. Customers were watching. You don't know what happened. You don't know what she was thinking. Men are so stupid. Women like that, they see a nice man, an older man with money, and they take advantage. She grabbed my phone off the counter. "Let me see." "Shiela, stop. This is crazy." I tried to take it back. "If you have nothing to hide, let me see." She was already scrolling through my messages. "What's your password?" "I'm not giving you my password. That's private." The moment I said it, I knew I'd made a mistake. Her face crumbled. "Private. You need privacy from me. Your girlfriend, the woman you live with. You need secrets." She dropped my phone on the counter and walked out. Just left. In the middle of her shift. In the middle of the day. I stood there, frozen, watching her disappear down the street. Manny picked up the phone, handed it to me. "Boss, you need to go after her. I need to run the cafe." But I was already untying my apron. "We'll handle it. Go." "She's upset." Carlo nodded in agreement. I found her 3 blocks away, sitting on a bench, crying into her hands. I sat next to her, didn't touch her, just waited. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I know I'm being crazy. I know you didn't do anything wrong, but I can't help it. When I see other women around you, I just feel like I'm going to lose you. Like it's only a matter of time before you see someone better. There is no one better." How many times do I have to say it? I was tired. So tired. "Then prove it. Give me your password. Let me see your phone whenever I want. If you have nothing to hide, it shouldn't matter." She looked at me, waiting. I should have said no. I should have walked away right then. But I thought about going home alone. About starting over at 65. About how pathetic that would be. So I gave her my password. She smiled through her tears. "Thank you. This will help. I promise. I just need to know I can trust you. You can trust me. You always could." I pulled her close. She smelled like the cafe. Coffee and cinnamon. Familiar. Safe. That night, I woke up at 2 in the morning. Shiela wasn't in bed. I found her in the living room, scrolling through my phone, her face lit blue in the darkness. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Checking. Just checking." "Go back to bed." She didn't look up. "Checking what?" "There's nothing there." I sat next to her. "Your messages with Josie. Why does she text you so much?" Shiela turned the screen toward me. "Work messages, shift schedules, supply questions. Completely innocent. She's my employee. That's work stuff." I took the phone from her. "This has to stop. You're going through my phone at 2 in the morning. This isn't normal." "What's not normal is having a pretty young girl texting you all the time. What's not normal is you defending her instead of me." Shiela stood up. Maybe I should just leave. Maybe you'd be happier with someone like her. Someone young, someone educated, someone who doesn't need you. Don't do that. Don't manipulate me. But even as I said it, I felt guilty. Like I was being unreasonable. Like I was the problem. I'm not manipulating you. I'm telling you how I feel. But if my feelings are too much for you, then maybe we shouldn't be together. She walked toward the bedroom. Wait. Shiela, wait. I grabbed her hand. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. Your feelings matter. They're important to me. I don't know how to make you feel secure. I don't know what else I can do. You can put boundaries with Josie. Tell her to only message you about emergencies. Tell her to respect our relationship. She wasn't asking. She was instructing. Okay. I'll talk to her tomorrow. I pulled her back to bed. She curled against me, satisfied. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how I'd gotten here. The next morning, I called Josie aside. Hey, can we talk? Sure. What's up? She smiled. Friendly. Open. It's about the texting. The work stuff. Shiela feels uncomfortable with how often we message. So maybe just call the cafe phone if you need something. Or ask Manny or Carlo. I couldn't look at her. Oh, okay. Did I do something wrong? She looked confused. Hurt. No, not at all. It's just, relationship stuff. Shiela's sensitive about things. I'm trying to make her feel more secure. I hated how weak I sounded. Right. Okay. I'll keep my distance. Josie walked away, and I felt like I'd just lost an ally, like I'd just chosen sides against myself. That afternoon, a supplier texted about a delayed order. I responded, handled it, thought nothing of it. That night, Shiela confronted me. You deleted messages. She was holding my phone. What? No, I didn't. I grabbed it, looked. The supplier conversation was there. That's work, a delivery issue. Then why didn't you tell me about it? Why didn't you show me? She was crying again. Always crying. Because it was boring. Because it was just business. Because I didn't think I needed to report every text to you. I was getting angry now. Really angry. You don't think you need to report to me. Your girlfriend. The person you live with. The person who gave up her life to be with you. She said it like she'd sacrificed everything. Like I owed her. You didn't give up anything. You moved from Quezon to Malate. You work in my cafe. I support you. I pay for everything. What exactly did you give up? The moment I said it, I regretted it. Her face went cold. I gave up my independence, my privacy, my friends who warned me about this, about you, about older foreign men who make promises and then change. She grabbed her purse. I'm staying at my mother's tonight. Don't call me. She left. I stood in the empty condo, my phone in my hand, feeling like the villain in a story I didn't understand. I called her anyway. She didn't answer. I texted an apology. She read it, didn't respond. 3 days later, she came back. I apologized again, begged her to stay, promised I'd be more transparent, more available, more everything. She forgave me, but something had shifted. The cafe stopped being ours. It started being hers. She began making decisions without asking me, changing the menu, adjusting prices, telling customers we were out of things when we weren't. I watched it happen, watched myself become an employee in my own business, and I didn't stop it, because every time I tried, she'd threaten to leave, and I was more afraid of being alone than I was of losing myself. Shiela brought it up on a Sunday morning. We were having breakfast, and she set her fork down, looked at me with those serious eyes. I want to get married. She said it like she was ordering coffee. Simple, direct. Married? I repeated, like I didn't understand the word. Yes, we've been together almost 6 months. We live together. We run a business together. Why wouldn't we get married? She wasn't asking. She was stating facts. I don't know. I didn't think we were there yet. I fumbled for the right words. I was married before. It didn't end well. I'm not sure I'm ready to do that again. But I'm not good enough to marry. Her voice was flat, dangerous. That's not what I said. Don't twist my words. I felt panic rising. This was a trap. Every answer was wrong. Then what are you saying, Terrence? Because it sounds like you're saying I'm good enough to cook your food and work your cafe and warm your bed, but not good enough to be your wife. She pushed her plate away. I need time. That's all. Time to think. I reached for her hand. She pulled back. How much time? Another 6 months? A year? 5 years? How long until I'm good enough? She stood up. My friends were right. Foreign men don't marry Filipinas unless they have to. Unless they get them pregnant or need a visa or something. I'm just convenient for you. That's all I am. You're everything to me. I stood too, tried to hold her. She pushed me away. Then prove it. Marry me. Make it real. Show everyone I'm not just some girl you picked up in Manila. Show me you're serious. She was crying, but her eyes were hard, calculating. Let me think about it, please. This is a big decision. I needed time, space, air. Think about what? Whether I'm worth it. Whether you love me enough. She grabbed her purse. I'm going to my mother's. When you decide if I matter, call me. Until then, don't. She left. I sat in the empty condo, my coffee getting cold, wondering how I'd lost control of this. My phone rang. It was my son back in Australia. I almost didn't answer. Hey, Dad. Just checking in. How's Manila? His voice was distant, polite. We hadn't really talked since I left. It's good. The cafe's doing well. I couldn't tell him about Shiela. Couldn't admit I was living with someone I'd known less than a year. That's great. Listen, I can't talk long, but I wanted to say, if you ever want to come back, you're always welcome. The spare room's available. He was being nice, dutiful, not loving, not close. Thanks. I appreciate that. I hung up feeling more alone than before. That night, I lay in bed imagining going back to Mackay, the empty house, the silence, the pity in people's eyes, failed marriage, failed retirement, failed life. In the morning, I called Shiela. I'll do it. I'll marry you. I said it before I could change my mind. She was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, Really? You mean it? Yes, I mean it. I love you. I want to be with you. Let's get married. I was trying to convince myself as much as her. Oh, Terrence, thank you. Thank you. You won't regret this. I promise. I'll be the best wife. I'll make you so happy. She was crying again, but these were happy tears. I could tell the difference now. We got married 3 weeks later at Manila City Hall. Quick, quiet. Her family came. Her mother, who barely spoke English. Her 2 brothers, who looked at me like I was a bank account. Her aunt, who whispered in Tagalog the whole time. I understood enough to know she was talking about me. My kids didn't come. I didn't invite them. Didn't want to explain. Shiela wore a white dress from the mall. I wore the same khakis I wore to the cafe. The ceremony took 10 minutes. The official spoke in a bored monotone. We signed papers. We were married. At the lunch afterward, Shiela's mother kept thanking me. Salamat, salamat. Over and over, her brothers asked about the cafe, how much I made, if I owned the building. Her aunt asked if I had life insurance. I smiled and deflected, pretended I didn't understand what they were really asking. That night, back at the condo, Shiela brought it up. I want my name on the cafe. On the business registration. We're married now. It should be both of ours. She said it casually. while brushing her teeth. That's a big step. I mean, the cafe's in my name. It's my investment, my savings. I was standing in the doorway, suddenly very aware of how small the bathroom was. Your savings that I help earn every single day. Your investment that I make profitable. Your cafe that I run while you make coffee. She turned to face me. I'm your wife now, Terrence. We're supposed to share everything. That's what marriage means. I know. You're right. I just need to talk to my lawyer. Make sure it's done properly. I was stalling. Why do you need a lawyer? You don't trust me? After everything? After marrying me? Her voice was rising. I trust you. I just want to do it right. Legal. Proper. I felt cornered. Again. No. You want to keep it from me. You want to make sure I can't touch your precious cafe if we break up. That's what this is about. She pushed past me into the bedroom. Shiela, please, don't do this. Not tonight. We just got married. I followed her. Exactly. We just got married. And you're already planning our divorce. You're already protecting yourself from me. She sat on the bed, her face in her hands. I can't believe I was stupid enough to think you actually loved me. I do love you. I married you. I sat next to her, pulled her close. I'll add your name. Tomorrow. I promise. We'll go to the lawyer together. It'll be our cafe, both of ours. She looked up at me, tears streaming. Really? You promise? I promise. I kissed her forehead. I'm sorry. I'm just scared. Change is scary. But I trust you. I do. We added her name the next week. She stood next to me at the lawyer's office, signing papers, smiling that satisfied smile. I watched the lawyer stamp the documents and felt like I'd just given away the last piece of myself that was truly mine. That night, Shiela was different, lighter, happier. She made my favorite dinner, adobo with extra garlic. We ate on the couch, watching some Filipino drama she loved. She rested her head on my shoulder. See, this is what marriage is supposed to be. Partnership, sharing, trust. She squeezed my hand. I'm so glad you finally understand. Me too. I lied. But deep down, I knew. I knew I'd just made a mistake I couldn't take back. I knew the cafe wasn't really ours. It was hers now. And I was just the guy who made the coffee. I got to the cafe early on Monday, like always. But when I walked in, Josie's keys weren't on the hook. She always opened with me on Mondays. I texted her. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. Shiela arrived 20 minutes later, casual, unbothered. Where's Josie? I asked. I let her go. She started setting up the register like she'd just told me the weather. You what? Without talking to me? I felt my chest tighten. She was disrespectful, always interrupting our conversations, always trying to get your attention. We don't need people like that. Shiela didn't even look up. She was our best barista. Customers loved her. You can't just fire people without discussing it. I was trying to keep my voice down. Manny and Carlo were in the back. I can do whatever I want. It's my cafe too, remember? You made sure of that. She smiled, but it wasn't kind. Besides, my cousin Prissy needs a job. She'll start tomorrow. Your cousin? Shiela, we can't just hire your family without interviews, without checking if they're qualified. I felt control slipping through my fingers. She's qualified. She worked at a cafe in Quezon. She needs money. We're helping family. That's what you do when you're Filipino. Maybe it's different in Australia, but here, we take care of our own. The way she said it, like I was the outsider. She was 19, shy, didn't know how to work the espresso machine. I spent the whole morning training her while Shiela handled the register. By lunch, we were behind on orders. Customers were complaining. One regular, an older American guy named Greg, pulled me aside. Terrence, what happened to Josie? She was great. This new girl seems lost. Greg was maybe 70, been coming to the cafe since I opened. Management changes, still figuring it out. I tried to sound confident. Well, figure it faster. I come here for good coffee and good service. Right now, I'm not getting either. He wasn't being mean, just honest. I appreciated it. Shiela didn't. She'd been watching from across the room. What did he say to you? Just feedback. Customer feedback. It's normal. I started wiping down the machine. Feedback about what? About Prissy? About me? Her voice was sharp. About the service being slower, which it is, because we're training someone new. I kept my tone neutral, so it's my fault. That's what you're saying. I made a mistake firing Josie. I'm ruining your cafe. She slammed the register drawer closed. Customers looked over. I didn't say that. Can we talk about this later? At home? I glanced around. This wasn't the place. No, we'll talk about it now. You're embarrassed of me. You think I'm not smart enough to make business decisions. You think I'm just some uneducated Filipina who got lucky. She was getting louder. Shiela, please. Not here. I tried to guide her to the back room. She shrugged me off. Don't touch me. Don't act like you care about me when you just spent 10 minutes talking to that old man about how bad I am at my job. She grabbed her purse and left. Again. Always leaving. Always making me chase. I finished the shift feeling like a ghost in my own place. Prissy tried her best, but she was overwhelmed. Manny and Carlo exchanged looks but said nothing. When I got home that night, Shiela was already there, calm, like nothing had happened. I talked to my cousin. She's going to study the menu tonight. She'll be faster tomorrow. She was cooking, moving around the kitchen like she owned it. Okay, that's good. I didn't know what else to say. And I've been thinking, we should change suppliers. The one you use for beans is too expensive. I found a cheaper option. She handed me her phone. Some supplier in Quezon. I use that supplier because the quality's good. Customers can tell the difference. I handed the phone back. Customers can't tell anything. Coffee is coffee. We'll save 2,000 pesos a month. That's 24,000 a year. That's smart business. She wasn't asking my opinion. She was informing me. Over the next month, everything changed. She hired another cousin for deliveries. Fired Carlo because he looked at her wrong. Changed the Wi-Fi password so I couldn't access the cafe's social media. Started taking half the daily earnings before we even counted the register. When I asked about it, she said, "It's our money. I'm sending some to my mother. She's sick, remember? Or do you not care about my family?" I cared. I did. But I also cared about watching my cafe become something I didn't recognize. The coffee was worse. The service was slower. Regular customers stopped coming. Leah never came back. Greg came in one last time, looked around, and said, "This isn't the same place, mate. Good luck." He didn't come back either. The cafe that used to feel warm, alive, started feeling cold, empty. And I felt it too, like I was disappearing. Like the version of me that had moved to Manila to start over had been completely erased. One day, a tourist couple came in. The woman was blonde, maybe 40, asked me about local attractions. I answered quickly, politely, kept my distance. But Shiela still saw, still reacted. That night, she screamed at me for 20 minutes about the blonde woman, about how I smiled at her, about how I was cheating on her in my mind. I tried to calm her down. She threw a coffee cup against the wall. It shattered. I cleaned it up in silence. She watched me, breathing hard, and said, "You make me do this. You make me crazy." I slept on the couch that night. I slept on the couch a lot now, and lying there in the dark, listening to traffic outside, I realized something. I was afraid. Not of Shiela hitting me. She never did. But afraid of her voice, her anger, her tears. Afraid of what she'd do next. Afraid of who I'd become if I stayed. But more afraid of being alone if I left. So I stayed. I kept making coffee. I kept apologizing for things I didn't do. I kept pretending this was normal, that this was love, that this was what I deserved. I found the bank statement by accident. I was looking for a receipt in Shiela's bag, and there it was, our Café account. Transfers, dozens of them, 5,000 pesos, 3,000, 8,000, every week, all to her mother's account. I sat on the bed, staring at the numbers, adding them up in my head. Over 60,000 pesos in 2 months. More than $1,500. My hands were shaking. When Shiela got home, I was still holding the statement. We need to talk. I held it up. She glanced at it, then at me, completely unbothered. What about it? You've been sending money to your mother, a lot of money, without telling me. I kept my voice level, calm. So, she's my mother. She needs help with her medication. I told you she was sick. She started unpacking groceries like this was nothing. You told me. You didn't tell me you were sending thousands of pesos every week. From our business account. I stood up. That's my money, Shiela. I earned it. I built that cafe. She stopped, turned to me, smiled. Your money? Really? You think it's your money? I invested everything I had into that cafe, my retirement savings, my future. Yes, it's my money. I felt something breaking inside me. Something final. No, Terrence, it's our money. You married me? Remember? You put my name on the papers. That makes it ours, and I can do whatever I want with our money. She said it so calmly, like she'd been planning this all along. You can't. That's not how it works. You can't just drain the account for your family. I was getting desperate, panicked. My family who welcomed you when your own children won't even visit? My family who treated you like you mattered? You're really going to stand there and tell me I can't help them? She was advancing on me now, her voice rising. You don't care about them. You never did. You just wanted a young Filipina to make you feel like a man again. That's all I ever was to you. That's not true. I love you. I married you. I gave you everything. My voice cracked. I hated how weak I sounded. You gave me a cage. You gave me a job in your cafe and a room in your condo and a marriage certificate so I couldn't leave without losing everything. But guess what? She was smiling now, and it was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. I'm on the lease. I'm on the business papers. You can't kick me out. You can't take the cafe from me. So yes, I'll send money to my mother. And yes, I'll help my family. Because it's my cafe too. And there's nothing you can do about it. She was right. I stood there, holding that bank statement, and realized she was completely right. I'd given her everything, made her legally equal, bound myself to her in every way that mattered, and now she was using it all against me. I want you to leave, I said quietly. No, she crossed her arms. Shiela, I'm asking you to leave. This isn't working. You know it's not. I was begging now. Then you leave. Go back to Australia, back to your empty house and your kids who don't call. I'll stay here. I'll run the cafe. I'll keep the condo. After all, my name's on everything. She sat down on the couch, turned on the TV. Conversation over. I grabbed my wallet, my phone, and left. I walked for hours. Through Malate, down to Roxas Boulevard, along the bay, families everywhere, couples holding hands, old men fishing off the seawall, normal people living normal lives. I stopped at a bar, had 3 beers, tried to figure out what to do. My phone rang. My son again. I answered this time. Dad, you okay? You sound weird. His voice was concerned. Actual concern. I'm fine. Just tired. I watched the sun set over Manila Bay, orange and purple and impossibly beautiful. Dad, seriously, what's going on? You never call. You never visit. Are you in trouble? He knew. Somehow, he knew. I made some mistakes. That's all. I'll be okay. I finished my beer. Do you need money? Do you need help getting home? He was offering. My son was offering to help me. No, I don't need money. I just need to think. I hung up before I could cry. When I got back to the condo, it was past midnight. Shiela was asleep. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching her breathe, and felt nothing. No love, no anger, just emptiness. The next morning, I didn't go to the cafe. I stayed in the condo, staring at the walls, trying to remember who I was before all this, before Shiela, before Manila, before I'd convinced myself that starting over meant giving everything away. My phone buzzed. Messages from Manny, from Prissy, asking where I was. I didn't respond. Shiela came home at lunch, surprised to find me there. Why aren't you at the cafe? I'm done. You want it? It's yours. Run it. I don't care anymore. I didn't look at her. You're being dramatic. You're upset about the money. I get it. I'll slow down the transfers. Okay? I'll ask you first next time. She was using her soft voice, her manipulation voice. It's not about the money. It's about everything. You've taken everything from me. The cafe, the condo, my dignity. I have nothing left. I finally looked at her. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're my husband. You're the man I married. You're Terrence. She sat next to me, tried to take my hand. I pulled away. No, I'm not. I'm whoever you need me to be so you can feel secure, so you can control everything. I'm not a person to you. I'm a resource. The truth felt heavy. Final. That's not fair. I love you. I do. I just get scared sometimes. I just need to know you won't leave. She was crying. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt tired. I won't leave. Because I can't. You made sure of that. But I'm not staying because I want to. I'm staying because I'm trapped. I stood up, went to the bedroom, closed the door. She didn't follow. For the first time in months, she let me be alone. And in that silence, I realized the truth. I'd lost. Completely. Totally. She'd won. And there was no coming back from it. I met with a lawyer on a Wednesday morning. His office was in Makati, small, cluttered with files. He listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You can dissolve the business, legally separate it, but your wife owns 50%. She can fight you. She can make this very expensive, very long. He said it kindly, but I heard what he meant. I couldn't win. How expensive? I asked. 6 months minimum, maybe a year. Legal fees, court costs, you're looking at 500,000 pesos. Maybe more. He watched my face fall. And she'll get half anyway. That's the law. So I gave her my cafe, my future, and now I have to pay to get away from her. I laughed. It sounded broken. Essentially, yes. I'm sorry. I see this a lot with expats. They meet someone, move fast, don't protect themselves, and then it ends badly. He wasn't judging, just stating facts. I left his office and sat in a coffee shop across the street. Not my cafe, just some chain place with bad music and indifferent staff. I ordered a flat white. It was terrible. I drank it anyway. My phone rang. It was Shiela. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. On the 4th call, I picked up. Where are you? We need to talk. Her voice was tight. Controlled. I'm done talking. I went to a lawyer. I know my options, and I've made a decision. I was surprised how calm I sounded. What decision? Now she sounded nervous. I'm signing over my half of the cafe. All of it. You can have it. I don't want to fight. I don't have the energy. I watched people walk past the window. Normal people. Happy people. Terrence, wait. We can figure this out. We can work together. I know I've been difficult, but I can change. She was scrambling. For the first time, she sounded afraid. You won't change. You don't need to. You got what you wanted. The cafe's yours. The condo's yours. Everything's yours. I'm just taking myself back. What's left of me, anyway? I hung up. She called back immediately. I turned off my phone. I went to the lawyer's office the next day with the documents. Shiela was already there. She looked small, tired, older than 34. We sat on opposite sides of the table while the lawyer explained the papers. I'd surrender my ownership stake. She'd take full control. In exchange, she'd waive any claim to my remaining savings. My pension. It wasn't much, but it was something. You really want to do this? She asked quietly. I really do. I signed the first page, then the second, then the third. She watched me sign, and for a moment, I thought she might cry, might apologize, might admit what she'd done. Instead, she picked up the pen and signed her parts. Efficient, businesslike. When we were done, the lawyer stamped the documents. It's official. The business is now solely in your name, Mrs. Terrence. It's just Shiela, she said. I'm going back to my maiden name. I nodded. Made sense. She'd gotten what she needed. No point keeping my name. We walked out together, stood on the sidewalk in the Makati heat. So this is it, she said. This is it. I looked at her, really looked at her. Maybe for the first time in months. She wasn't evil. She was just surviving, using the tools she had, the tools I'd given her. For what it's worth, I did love you, in the beginning. She said it like she was trying to convince herself. Maybe you did, or maybe you loved what I could give you. I don't think either of us knows anymore. I started walking away. Terrence. I turned back. She was crying now. Real tears. I'm sorry. I know you won't believe me, but I am. I didn't mean for it to end like this. Yes, you did. You meant for it to end exactly like this. You just didn't think I'd walk away. I smiled, but it wasn't cruel. Just sad. Goodbye, Shiela. I hope the cafe makes you happy. I really do. I booked a flight for the next week, one way to Sydney. I'd figure out Mackay later. I spent my last days in Manila packing, selling furniture, saying goodbye to the few friends I'd made. Manny came by the condo. Boss, I'm sorry about everything. Shiela. She's running the cafe differently. It's not the same. It never will be. But that's okay. It's hers now. She can do what she wants with it. I handed him a box of kitchen stuff. Here, take this. I can't bring it. You're really leaving? You're going back to Australia? He looked sad. Manny was a good kid. Always respectful. I am. There's nothing for me here anymore. I shook his hand. Take care of yourself. The night before my flight, Shiela showed up at the condo. She had a key, but she knocked. I opened the door. She was holding a bag of takeout. I brought dinner, your favorite, adobo. She held it up like a peace offering. I'm not hungry, but thank you. I didn't invite her in. Can we talk? Please? Just one last time? She looked desperate, lost. There's nothing left to say. I started to close the door. Wait, I need to say something. I need you to know. She put her hand on the door. You were good to me. Better than anyone ever was. And I ruined it. I know I did. I got scared and I turned into someone I hate. And now I have everything I thought I wanted, and it feels empty. The cafe feels empty. The condo feels empty. I feel empty. Then you understand how I've felt for the last 6 months. I said it gently, without anger. I do. And I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything. But I'm sorry. She was shaking. You were right. I never loved you. I loved what you represented. Security. Stability. A way out. And I used you. And I hate myself for it. Don't hate yourself. Just learn from it. Be better with the next guy. I took the bag of food. Thank you for this. For everything. Even the bad parts. You taught me something important. What's that? She wiped her eyes. That I'm worth more than I thought. That I don't have to settle. That being alone is better than being invisible. I smiled. So thank you. Really. You were always too soft, Terrence. That's why you lost, she said it sadly. Not cruelly. Maybe. But I'd rather be soft than hard. I'd rather lose with kindness than win with cruelty. I closed the door. Gently. Finally. I boarded the plane at 2 in the afternoon. Manila spread out below me as we climbed. The bay, the buildings, the traffic, the chaos. Somewhere down there was my cafe, my condo, the life I'd built and given away. I watched it all disappear into clouds and felt nothing. No relief, no regret, just emptiness. The flight was 14 hours. I slept most of it. When we landed in Sydney, I got a text from my son. Let me know when you land. I'll pick you up. He was waiting at arrivals, older than I remembered, more like me than I'd realized. He hugged me, and I held on longer than I meant to. Welcome home, Dad. He grabbed my bag. Thanks for coming. My voice was rough. Of course. That's what family does. He looked at me. Really looked. You okay? I will be. Eventually. We walked to the car. Australia smelled different. Felt different. Like somewhere I used to know but didn't quite recognize. Back in Mackay, I moved into my old rental, the same place I'd left 3 years ago, same ceiling fan, same empty rooms. But it felt different this time. Like I was different. I wasn't running anymore. I was just existing, learning how to be alone without being lonely. My daughter called a week later. Dad, I heard you're back. Can I visit? I'd like that. I meant it. She came the next weekend with her 2 kids, my grandchildren who I barely knew. We sat in the backyard, drinking tea, watching them play. Dad, what happened in Manila? Mark said, you seemed really down. I made some mistakes, trusted the wrong person, lost some things. I sipped my tea. But I'm okay now, I think. Do you regret going to the Philippines? She was genuinely asking. No judgment. No. I needed to go. I needed to try. I just wish I'd been smarter about it, more careful. I watched my grandson chase a ball across the yard. But I learned something. About myself, about what I'm worth, and what's that? She put her hand on mine. That I don't need someone else to make me whole. That being alone isn't the same as being lonely. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. I squeezed her hand. I'm going to be okay. I promise. And I was. Eventually, I got a part-time job at a local cafe. Just making coffee. No ownership. No stress. I reconnected with my kids, spent time with my grandchildren, started therapy, worked through the guilt and shame and regret. Some days were hard. I'd wake up and think about Shiela, about the cafe, about everything I'd lost. But other days were good. I'd have coffee with my son, play with my grandkids, go for walks on the beach. Those days, I felt like myself again, like the man I was before Manila, before Shiela, before I'd convinced myself that love meant surrender. 6 months after I got back, I got a message on Facebook from Manny. Boss, thought you should know. Sheila closed the cafe, said it wasn't profitable anymore. She moved back to Quezon. I'm sorry. I read it twice. Felt nothing. No satisfaction. No sadness. Just acceptance. She'd gotten what she wanted, and it hadn't been enough. Just like I'd gotten what I thought I wanted and learned it was never about the cafe. It was about finding myself, and in losing everything, I'd finally done that. I typed back, thanks for letting me know. I hope she's okay. Take care of yourself. I closed the app, made myself dinner, watched the sunset from my back porch, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. And that was enough. That was more than enough. It was everything.